All right, welcome everyone. My name is Coach David. I am here with egelloC Financial Aid, part of egelloC, and today we're going to be talking about FAFSA, the Department of Education, the one big beautiful bill that's not so beautiful, and we're going to talk about kind of how that affects financial aid in general. Also, unfortunately, I'm going to be talking about how it affects our child, like our students' futures. Okay. And so if you have a student in college right now, if you have a student that is planning on going to college right now, I have a lot of families that are kind of saying, oh, I have a 12th grader, I have 11th grader, right? So all this is great, right? Thank you guys for putting your student's grade into the chat. Right. If you guys have questions about anything as we're going through, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. I want to try to answer every question to the best of my ability. So please make sure to do that. Okay. Now, for today, right, just to give you guys a little bit of an agenda, right? Oh, that didn't change, but we're going to be talking about the different changes on the different bills, right? And for those of you that are here for the first time, my name is Coach David. I used to be a law school and college admissions reader, right? I used to be a former lawyer, right? Now I am in college admissions and helping families get to college and also help pay for college, right? And I've been able to help families save a lot of money. Okay. Now, the first thing that I want to do is kind of show you our brand new spanking kind of like logo. Okay. I had like a fake one before, and finally our kind of design team was able to get me my own, right? So we are now officially egelloC Financial Aid. A lot of you guys might know us by Financial Aid Secrets, right? Basically, same thing, different logo. Okay. So if you guys get messages from Financial Aid Secrets or from egelloC Financial Aid, either one is us. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Now, I do like to start off with a little bit of financial aid news, right? The reason I like to do this is to keep everyone in the know about what's going on in financial aid, if there's any big new things that are, that we should be kind of aware of. And so let's kind of talk about that. Okay. So the one big thing that I want to kind of point out this week is that there has been reductions in staff, right? Basically, like the whole like team at the Department of Education was like fired, right? They were all terminated, but they were reinstated. But like realistically, if you were fired and then you were reinstated, how many people go back? There's not a lot of job security there, right? In July alone, right, there was an increase in kind of complaints and disruptions in the financial aid process from 59 to 72%, right? Again, you might be thinking, well, that's just 13%, but look at the bottom baseline number, right? That's basically saying that there's been like 60% of situations and things that and transactions that have been happening have had like processing problems or responsiveness problems, right? And so 13% increase in just 1 month, right, is a pretty scary thing to see, right? Now, again, like I said, this is consequences of things that have happened previously, right? So, like, again, people getting fired, then reinstated, this and that, right? The FAFSA has not been, and like Department of Education has not really been on the ball for the last 2.5 years, right? With what is happening currently in the current administration, it's not looking like it's going to be any better, right? They did a survey of students that is kind of applying for financial aid or that did apply for financial aid last year. The level of confusion has gone up from 32% to 51%. Half of the people that are applying for financial aid every single year, right, are confused about what they're supposed to be doing, right? Now, just last week, I talked about how many students are not applying for financial aid, right? I believe the statistic was that there's about 2.4 million students every year, or basically that are applying for college every single year, right? That means that out of that, I think it was like 1.6 million actually apply for aid, right? Um, or kind of complete the FAFSA. That means that there's 800,000 people that are unsure about what to do for financial aid, right? My prediction is that this year, while the forms have been fixed, while the website might have been fixed, right? And I put that in quotes because it's always glitching, right? There's going to be delays this year too, right? It was supposed to be figured out 2 years ago. It wasn't. It was supposed to be figured out last year. It wasn't. This year, I'm not that hopeful that it's going to open up on time. Okay. So that's kind of the news, right? What will happen next is anyone's guess, but I'll try to keep you guys updated, right? So stay tuned for any other breaking news. Okay. Now, before we try get into our training today about the one big beautiful bill and kind of what's going on currently with like, the different pieces of that puzzle, right? I have a quick message for you guys. But here's the thing, right? It's not lasting for long, right? If you do have a rising senior, right? Or well, school started now, so If you have a senior and they haven't done anything for their applications, I'm sorry to tell you guys, but you guys are way behind right now. Okay. Our students have been working since April, right? There's a lot of our students that are already done with their PIQs and their common applications, right? And they're working on their supplementals for their early action, early decision schools, right? We have different programs available to you, but this is literally your last chance, right? Make sure to talk to our team about the options we have for your 2026 student. I will have a link, a QR code at the end that you guys can use to reach out to our team. They will get you sorted out ASAP. Okay. Our advisors are kind of like they'll meet you early, they'll meet you late, they'll meet you on the weekends. We'll figure out a time to talk to you. Okay. But with that, let's talk about FAFSA and changes due to the one bill. Okay. Now, today, I'm actually surprised because I thought this was going to be more of a boring topic, but seems like there's a lot of people here, right? So more than normal. So thank you guys for joining me. But I'll try to go through this very dense kind of topic as simply as possible so it makes sense to you guys. Okay. So the one bill, we'll call it, right? Because it's really hard to say one big, beautiful bill every single time. We'll just call it the one bill, right? But there are things that have changed. And here are the biggest ones that affect kind of like people on a like everyday kind of level, right? First, loan limits have changed, right? Repayment plans have changed. Forbearance and deferment have changed. That's kind of like pushing off your loans until later, right? Pell Grants have changed. The eligibility restrictions have changed. Calculating your student aid index has changed. I'm going to be talking about what the changes are, what the effects are, and what the takeaways are from that, right? But first, we're going to talk about loans. Okay. Now, I know no one likes to talk about loans because it's like, well, yeah, I don't want loans. I get it. But for some families, loans are a necessity that are needed in order to send their student to the school that they want to go to, right? Unfortunately, even though, right, in California, right, I'm in California, I live in the Bay Area, even though our incomes are highly inflated in the Bay Area, our cost of living is also very highly inflated, right? I've been looking at places to move recently, and one of the things I've noticed is that, well, if I moved to Austin, Texas, I could live on a 12-acre ranch instead of living in a, I don't know, like a two-bedroom house, right? So, there are differences here, but with the loans, these are the things that have changed, right? As far as for undergraduate students, not much has changed, right? So for student loans, right? Now, again, parents, you might be thinking back to when you were going to college and you got a loan for the whole kind of amount to go to attend your school. Unfortunately, that those days are long gone, right? The limits now are this, right? For the first year, you're allowed to get $5,500. The second year, the student can take $6,500. The third and the fourth years, they can take $7,500. That is it. It doesn't matter if you're going to a state school, it doesn't matter if you're going to a private school. These are the limits of what a student is able to take, right? Now, the loan amounts for current kind of graduate students are going to stay the same. So if your student is in medical school, law school, they're doing their MBA, those loan limits are the same. But what has changed, right, is very big changes that are happening. And these are going to be for loans that are taken after July 1st, 2026, right? So if you're taking loans this year, you're not going to be subject to this yet, right? It'll be for loans for the following year, okay? So for parent plus loans, right? So those are the loans that parents take to fill the gap, right? There is going to be now a limit on the amount that a family can borrow, right? Before, let's say that your student took out loans, right? They also got some money from school. Let's say they were going to a private school, right? Costing around $90,000, right? And so the student got around 5K in loans, right? The school gave you about, I don't know, let's say $25,000. So that's $30,000 off the total sticker price. That's $60,000. Before, the parents could take a loan for $60,000, right? Now what's going to happen is that there is a 20K limit per year with a lifetime maximum of 65,000 per year. What does that mean? That means that if your student is now going to a private school, basically what's happening is, okay, student gets 5, school gave you 25. That's 30 off, it's 60. The maximum that a parent can take is $20,000 per year. So they can take a $20,000 loan, right? But there's still a $40,000 gap per year. Now, what are they saying? They're saying that now the family needs to come up with $40,000 in cash to send their student to school. That is what is happening nowadays, right? Or what will be happening after June or July 1st, 2026. Okay. For graduate students that are going to be entering graduate school, right? This has also changed as well, right? There is going to be now an imposed limit of a yearly 20.5K loan amount. Okay. I don't know if you guys have seen what it costs to go to graduate school, but it's not 20K. Okay. So, and also they have a lifetime aggregate of $100,000. Okay. So that's all you can take, right? So basically, they're saying that you can go to graduate school for 5 years, right? But again, graduate school is usually shorter than that. But the maximum amount that you can take over however many years you go is 100K. Now, for law and medical degrees, right? They are saying that the new limit is going to be 50K a year, right? Lifetime 200K, right? Okay, all right. So the limits are getting a little bit higher for, longer term kind of things, right? But over the course, right, of anyone, like the student taking loans and all this and all that, right, the total lifetime amount that a student can take is 275K. So let's take just a very like let's say that the student took student loans in undergrad and then also went to like a master's program and then is ending up at law school or medical school. Let's say they took out the max amounts they could during their undergrad, which is around $27,000. Then they took the kind of they had a 2 year kind of graduate program, right? And they took the maximum amount. That means that it's now roughly speaking, 20 and a half times two is what? 41, right? Plus 28, that's about 70, right? So basically, they are kind of limiting the amounts that you can take. You would be able to still get the max for your law or medical degree. You would still be able to take out that 200K, but you would be kind of cutting it close up to that 275K lifetime limit. Okay. We have a question here. It says, do you know what the interest rate is for undergrad, student, and parent plus loans? So for undergrad students, the interest rate right now is 6.53 or 4%, right? For parent plus loans, currently, it's 9.08%. Okay. The interest rates are not yummy. Okay. That's why I've been telling families, go and shop your kind of credit around to see if you can get a lower interest rate. I actually saw a family get like in like the high fours or low fives at a private lender, educational lender. One of the things that the government's trying to do is push the loan obligations out into the private sector where they have more, let's put it this way. In the private sector, they have the non-payment of a loan has more teeth to it, right? Meaning that there's other legal kind of ways that they can get you to pay or like, take money from your paycheck or this and that. But with the government doesn't want to be seen doing that, so they don't really do those things, right? So it's kind of like there's no teeth to their agreement. So if people just don't pay, they just don't pay, right? So they're kind of getting sick of that, and so they pushed it out into the private sector. So it's like, hey, you know what? You guys can basically, take the interest that you're making off these loans, right? But if they don't pay, you guys can figure out the ways to take care of it, right? So that's basically what is happening. Okay. We have another question that says, is the lifetime max for parent plus loans on a per student basis or split between multiple children? It is per student, right? So 65K per student, right? So if you have three kids, then it's split up between those, or not split up. It's 65K for each of the students that you have. We have another question that says, is the limit set to 20K by both public and private lenders? For private lenders, they can you can do whatever you want, right? They don't have any limits. These are for the federal loan limits. Okay. So these are all great questions, right? I think I'm starting to see why this is a popular topic for families, right? But again, if you have questions, please make sure to ask them. Okay. So what does this mean for like a normal family, right? It means that like so state colleges, a lot of families understand state colleges, right? And there's ways to kind of lower costs going to one that's closer to home. So it makes more sense to go to state colleges financially. But it means that for private colleges, there's going to be families that can't afford it. Let's do this breakdown, right? So roughly 90K a year, right? I already kind of did this breakdown before. The borrowing for the student year one's $5,500. Borrowing for the parent is 20.5. So 26K can be borrowed, right? That means that the kind of like family needs to come up with the other 64K a year, right? So this begs the question, right? Okay, well, can only well-off families now send their kids to private school, right? Again, like I said, the government's trying to push off responsibilities onto other parties. They're trying to push out the loan responsibilities into the private market. They're also trying to push the kind of like, hey, you need to fill the gap to the colleges now, right? So again, we're in this weird situation of we're not exactly sure what's going to happen, but the one thing that we do know is that we need to be prepared for any and all situations. Okay. So, this also kind of translates into medical school, right? So education, like at a professional level, might not be attainable anymore. Okay. So for medical students, roughly, and for law students, right, it's roughly around 100K a year to attend, right? Again, yes, there's differences between going to an in-state school versus out-of-state school, this, that, so on and so forth. But on average, it's around 100K, right? That means that on average, that a student needs to spend about 400K in costs in order to complete their medical school or $300,000, roughly speaking, for law school. The maximum is $200,000, 50K a year, which means that families and students need to come up with $200,000 in order to pay for the rest of the costs. Okay. What does that mean? Again, either that means that everyone's going to become a doctor when they're 45 because now they have to save up 200K in order to go to medical school. And same thing for even for kind of like for law school, right? They need to save up 100K. So most people might be going to law school when they're 35 now, right? So I'm not exactly sure exactly how they're planning for this to actually work, right? But I think we're going to have a lull in people going to professional school because, again, it's a huge investment that people need to make, right? So unless your family can pay for it outright, or you find other funding options, right, other loan options. But again, if you are a straight like a graduate from like undergrad and you're asking a bank to let you borrow $100,000 a year for the next 4 years, what bank is going to do that? There is no, you don't have any credit, right? You haven't built anything up. You don't have any assets, right? So this is going to be a real kind of situation. And again, in 10 years, I don't know. Maybe we run out of doctors. Maybe we run out of lawyers. Maybe we run out of nurses. Who knows what ends up happening? Okay. Now, before we go into the other things that have changed with loan repayment, we have another question here, and it says, before you said the 559 is not good to have for the kids because it affects the financial aid calculation, but what about now with the new bill? It still affects the calculation. So if having a 529 is not good, right? The only types of 529s that are good are grandparent held 529s, right? Or brother held 529s, or sister or cousin held 529s, right? You don't want anything in your name, okay? Now, with loan repayment, right? This has changed as well too, right? So for loans taken after July 1st, 2026, right? There's going to be two options available to you. One is going to be a standard repayment option based on the amount, okay? So if the amount is under 25K, you're going to be at a 10-year repayment, right? 25 to 50, it's going to be 15 years, 50 to 100, 20 years, and then 100K or more is 25 years, okay? Before, everything was on a 25-year repayment method. Didn't matter if you were kind of at $1,000 loan limit, right? Or like $1,000 of student loans, or if you're at $100,000, it was all based on a 25-year repayment period, right? Now that is the standard one, right? They just divide it by the number of months and years that you're going to be repaying it, add on the interest, and then that's what you're going to be paying on a monthly basis, right? Now there's a second part, which is the repayment assistance plan that was just kind of like introduced. Okay. Now this is what the old like IBR used to be, or income-based repayment plan, but it's changed a little bit, right? So it is still based on your income, but usually what happened was if your income was like zero to $10,000, your basic payment would just be zero. But now there's a $10 flat payment that you need to pay, right? And then depending on where your income is on this bracket, they can take up to 10% of your not take-home income, but of your AGI, your gross income, right? So let's just say, your student's doing well for themselves. They graduated college, they got their first job, they're making, I don't know, I'm just going to make it an easy round number, right? I'm going to make it $120,000, right? Basically, what that means is that they can take 10% of that gross income. Now, realistically, right? Let's look at that. $120,000 after you pay taxes, maybe you're coming away with, I don't know, 90, right? But because they're looking at your AGI, your gross income before taxes, what ends up happening is that they take 10% of that. That's $12,000, right? That means that you can pay $1,000 a month, right? But in reality, you're making around 90, right? So 90 divided by 12. I'm really bad at math right now. I'm just going to call it roughly $7,500, right? That's what you bring home. Now you have to pay rent and you have to do this and that and so on and so forth. And you also have to pay $1,000 a month to your loans. Okay. It's not like it is a super nice way for them to have calculated it. They should have done it based on the kind of like taxable income because that's after you pay your like or even they should have done it after everything is paid, right? Your taxes are paid, all your deductions are taken out. Then they should have used that number in order to kind of dictate how much you can actually pay because that's a more realistic number, right? But they didn't. They took it from your gross income, line 11, which is the highest number usually on anyone's tax return. Okay. So that is another change that has happened there, right? We have another question, and it says, is it better to hold funds in a parent investment account versus a 529? I say it is because the growth is a lot better. The 529 average growth rate over the last 15 to 20 years has been about 3%, right? The market rate has been double or triple that sometimes. So I do think that it's better to have it in there. Obviously, the one downside to it is that the growth in your like parent held account is not tax free, right? You do have to pay taxes on the growth in that account. Okay. All right. The other thing, we have another question here before we move on to the next part, right? If you transfer ownership of a 529 plan to another account owner, another family member, but same beneficiary, will that new owner be taxed? I don't know the exact answer to that. One of the kind of things that we have been noticing is that there are some financial kind of planners or people that they bought their 529 from, and they're like a little wary about changing the owner of the 529, right? But technically speaking, no, it should not, because that the funds are not allowed to be used for anything except for the benefit of the beneficiary, right? So the funds are not just loose cash funds that anyone can take out. So there shouldn't be anything, but definitely talk to your CPA before you make any moves, right? Now, Pell Grants. These are kind of these are grants that are given by the federal government for families that are in lower income situations, right? But while the FAFSA changed last year to try to increase the number of people that can get Pell Grants, the one bill actually did the opposite and kind of like reversed that, right? And so basically the Pell Grant is not available for students that are already getting assistance from school to pay for tuition, right? And so if you have like a full ride or this or that or so on and so forth, the Pell Grant, it's not there anymore. Before, it was an extra kind of lifeline for families and students to have like emergency funds for anything that happens in the year or this or that, so on and so forth. But that's not going to be given anymore, right? But it also does things that are positive, right? It takes out like small businesses, less than 100 people out of that FAFSA calculation. So basically, what I see happening with like the Pell Grants and kind of the way the bill changes things, it kind of the kind of like positive and negative effects equal out, right? It's going to let some more people in on this side. It's going to keep some more people out on that side. So there's going to be around the same amount of people that is still getting aid from here, right? Now, the impact on financial aid, right? Just like I was saying, like in the financial aid news, there's going to be delays, there's going to be unforeseen events, there's going to be a lot of like weird things when like the new policies are getting implemented, so on and so forth. So even in this year where nothing is going to change until July 1st, 2026, there's going to be delays, things are going to break. I don't know why they can't figure it out, but this is their third year on trying to fix it, and it just is not working, right? But it does mean that we need to stay more vigilant about kind of like what's going on in the world of financial aid, and also like any changes that are happening. Okay. Now, the question that you guys are probably asking right now is, well, how does this affect my family or my student kind of like personally, right? Well, the first thing is there's limits on borrowing, and this might affect your families and your students' chances of going to college or a particular college, a particular grad school or professional school, right? That might also limit the career paths that your student might be able to take, right? So you need to make sure that your family's prepared for the cost of college and what it might look like in years to come. Because if it's just like, oh, well, we can take care of this year and we'll be fine. Well, the loans that you take out next year, they're not going to be fine because they're going to be limited by what we basically have in the new one bill, right? You need to also make sure to create a realistic budget for college, and you need to discuss it with your student. Okay. I have a lot of families say, "Oh, you know what? If you get into this school, we'll figure it out." That's not a plan, right? That is a Hail Mary, right? And if you're thinking about like, "Oh, you know what? If all else fails, I'll take money out of the equity in my home," right? That okay, so this is another topic for another day. But if you do that, it actually screws you for the following year. Okay, because again, taking money out, right, of your home out of the equity, right, it's going to show up on your tax returns. Okay. And then the final thing here is unfortunately, like just taking a loan is not a realistic option anymore. Before, you could like you could just take out the full cost of attendance in loans, in parent loans, and be like, we'll figure it out later, right? Now, right, with the limits that are going to be placed starting next year, basically around this time, right? You might not be set for all 4 years in college. So you really need to think about it. Even if you have students in college right now, you need to think about it. If you're taking more than 20K in loans per year, you're going to be in a little bit of a pickle. So you need to start preparing now. Okay. So quick takeaways, right? The biggest change in the whole situation is going to be the loan limits per year, right? Um, Again, this might restrict where you can go to college, right? I think that a lot of colleges are stepping up and being like, you know what? The government's going to say this and do this and do this. We will cover the gap, right? But I think the biggest thing that you need to take away from this is that you need to be fully prepared, right? With whatever situation comes down. But the only way to do that is to understand the situation you're in, talk to us, and then we can figure out what works and doesn't work for your family. Okay. So just some quicker results. I do see kind of like families or like not families, people asking questions, right? In the chat. If you do have other questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A in the chat as well. Now, obviously, these results don't really mean anything, right? And I know they don't mean anything because these are from last year, right? When we get results from this next crop, right? And then the crop after that, those are going to be ones that are more affected by the one bill, right? And then we will be able to see what I'm able to do for families that are in higher income situations as well, right? But again, here is a family that's a higher income family, right? I was able to get around 30, 35, 37K from different schools. This family over 400 and I got them 42,000, right? This family over like they were at 230, able to get them over 30,000 at a UC, and then I got them around 60 to 70K at various private schools in California. Okay. But this is now question time. I do want to answer your questions, so make sure you put them in the Q&A in the chat. But I also want to make sure that you guys have time to talk to us and actually get a real live look at what is in store for your family. So if you do have questions for us, right, you can text 949-775-0865. You can either text money or college, right? Depending on what program you're more interested in. So if you're interested in the financial aid program, text us money. If you're interested in our college coaching programs, especially for all those seniors I saw, if you're not already in our program, you should probably talk to us, right? And I made it super easy. You can also use these QR codes to sign up for a consultation as well. Okay. But there are some questions here, so I want to answer those, right? For those that need to kind of step out, right? Thanks for kind of spending some time with me. Okay. But let's go ahead and take a look at the questions. The first one that I haven't answered yet is, do you foresee community colleges enrollment will be significantly increased due to loan limitation? If yes, will community college be more impacted? Yes and no, right? So I think for the community colleges, hmm, let's put it this way. For community colleges, like, especially in California, so I'll talk about California in general. The general reason why students go to community college in California is to go to a UC or a CSU, right? Now, if we think about the cost of attendance of a UC or a CSU, if we have $25,000 on board with the parent loans and the student loans, usually, right? And again, I'm just talking in general, right? Families that, maybe make, I don't know, 100, 200, right? There's not going to be a huge issue paying around kind of like $10,000, $15,000 a year to send their student to a UC or CSU, right? Now, will you still save money if you go to community college and then go to a UC or CSU later? Yeah, you're still saving about, roughly speaking, if you go to like a community college that's close to your home, you're still saving roughly per year, you're saving, man, I can't do math right now. 40 minus like $7,000 or $8,000 a year. Let's just call it like $30,000 a year, right? So do I think that there will be more people that are going to take the transfer out? It's possible, right? Um, but right, the kind of transfer and community college route can always be something that you can do after you've tried applying to see what your chances are. Okay. We have a question that says, is the number of siblings considered while applying for financial aid? The simple answer is no, right? The more complicated answer is maybe, right? So talking about siblings, right? Just if you have a sibling, doesn't really matter. If there's a sibling in college, the answer is maybe, right? So, but it depends on the types of schools. If you're going to a public school, they don't care if you have one kid in college at a public school or two or 10 or 20, right? So it doesn't matter there, right? But the private schools, if you do have other siblings going to other colleges and they'll ask you kind of what price you're paying, all these different things. And so it does matter for private schools, right? That's why I said maybe. Okay. But obviously the siblings need to be in college. That's what kind of changes the scales. Okay. We have another question, and it says, will there be changes in our ability to consolidate Parent Plus loans and the student subsidized, unsubsidized loans that we have already once student graduates? Consolidation should also always be able to happen, but I don't think you're going to be able to consolidate the student and the parent loans because the signers are actually different, right? So I don't think they're going to let you do that, right? But you can consolidate and then you can refi at a lot of private lenders. Like just your parent loans or just your student loans, right? I've seen that happen fairly frequently. Okay. All right. Okay. Just to make this easy, right? Because I see that there's a couple of people that signed up, right? Oh, one last thing I want to tell you guys about. I should have led with this a little bit, right? But our prices are going up in the next 10 days. So if you want to take advantage of our lower price, please let us know ASAP so that we can sign you up for a call as soon as possible, right? I have blocked off a lot of my schedule, so you might not see availability. If you do not see availability, please reach out to us, right? We have an email, right? It's just fineaid@egelloc.com, right? Or you can reach out to our team via this phone number, right? And then we will reach out to you to find a time ASAP that we can meet with you because I had to block off a lot of my calendar because I was just getting bombarded. And so I need to be able to have a little flexibility so that I can meet with families and do all these different things. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Last call, last call. Let's give people a second. Again, the link is in the chat. The QR codes are up here. Make sure that you guys take a screenshot or do whatever you need to do. Okay. All right. I am not seeing any additional questions, right? So we'll kind of close down for the night. Okay. Again, thanks guys for spending a little time with me here today, right? I didn't know that this was going to be such a hot topic, right? But if there's other things that you guys are also interested in, please let me know, right? So I can kind of bring those things up because the questions that you have are probably the questions that every other parent has here. Okay. But we'll be back again next week with some more information. I think it's about 3 weeks. I'm also going to be doing a quick, presentation with Coach Ariel, who's a new addition to our coaching staff, right? And she's gonna be talking a little bit about finding those like kind of niche scholarships and small scholarships. But we'll also be talking about stacking and who this works for and who it doesn't work for. Okay. So that's just a little bit of a kind of a teaser, right? But I'll leave this up for a few minutes. If you guys do have any questions, let us know, right? Reach out to us by email, phone, right? Whatever you can, Facebook message, let us know what's going on. Okay. All right. So everyone have a great night. I know it's going to get hot this weekend, at least where I am. So stay cool and we'll talk again soon. All right. Bye-bye.